Crystal, there's a chair right up here for you.
We're just going to start calling you by name if you don't come to the front. But there's probably 10 more chairs at least up here.
That's not nice. I know. But he's tall.
I see so many people at the temple on Friday.
Yeah. Pardon me?
Just Friday.
Molly? We can't say anything either, can we, David? I don't think so.
All right, it's 6 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and get this meeting started. Very thankful, grateful for all of you for coming out tonight. It's so great to see this room full. We wish every city council meeting was like this. We were just talking about that this is probably the fullest this room's been. So thank you for taking your time to come out and learn about the business of the city, which is all of our business. And we have a pretty short agenda, but the items are all pretty heavy, so we're going to get started. We normally start our city council meetings with a prayer to lead in the pledge, and I don't see that on the agenda, but I think John Dean did lean over and say we could have a prayer. So would you like to offer a prayer?
Oh. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this night that we can all come together as a community. Please bless us that we can be civil and we ask Thee to have open dialogue and that we can share our thoughts and our concerns and our hopes. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So we're going to start the meeting off with a presentation and a review of the concept map by Alex Meisner. I really should have done some research with him so I could introduce him with a lot of information, but I do have a little bit of information, so you'll have to fact check me. He went to Parowan High School. He married a girl from Paraguna, which is Jennifer Rowley. She's the sister of Carrie Jeffries and August and Autumn, so you probably know the Rowley family. And I knew that his daughters knew how to do things right because when they pulled up, they got out of their cars and put their dairy freeze on top while they got out and, had to grab dairy freeze on the way over. So that's credible there for me. But anyway, Alex is going to kind of give us an overview, and then after that, we're going to get a roadmap on the annexation process by Dan Jessen. But our city manager is also going to kind of give us a layout for tonight's meeting as well.
So this is, even though you see the city council sitting on the front, this isn't a formal city council meeting. When we discussed how to go about this process, the council really wanted to have more than what is required by the minimum in the annexation process. There will be formal public hearings, at least one, and we'll get into that on the timeline of what's required, but we felt like this was a big enough deal that we wanted to have some more than one, if needed, informational meetings where we could talk about it, we could get information out there, we could understand what's being presented and all of that. So this is an open house. The council may as well be sitting down with you guys, and we have a presentation. It's a very informal thing. We do not have it set up. There's a spider. He's not dead though, so he may show his head again. So the intent really is to provide information so that we actually have an idea of what is being proposed. It's a concept at this point. The official process, we narrow down what the sponsor of the annexation would like to do, and then there's back and forth with the city council, culminating with public hearing, maybe public hearings, and some negotiation, and then ultimately a vote by city council. So one of the things I was cautious about when we very first entertained the petition was having too many meetings before we'd even formally started the process. I'll go into it with the timeline. There will be notice sent out to all of the property owners within a half mile of this subdivision. The state legislature has set it out in a very specific way so that everybody who could potentially be affected is aware of it and can come to the meetings. As many people as we have here, I guarantee you there are people that are within the legal boundaries that have to be noticed of this, still have no idea that this is happening. But we still wanted to have more information. We know it's a small community. The grapevine is a really cool thing, and it can also be very destructive. And the worst part about it is sometimes it just carries bad information, or it propagates bad information, which grows. So we asked Alex to come in and actually present what he is looking at doing, a concept map. Many things on this map, if the annexation and subdivision were to go in, will change throughout the process, but we wanted to give the public some sort of concept about what this really is that we're talking about. So the intent of this tonight is to have information. As the mayor said, I will give an information after this on the timeline. We debated whether or not to have a hearing tonight with the formal rules, and everybody comes up to the microphone. Sometimes those are just hearings, sometimes they're question and answer. We want to make sure that we have everybody's questions answered and asked, and even if it's not a question but just a comment, right? We want to give everybody a chance to have a voice and answer their questions. We figured that there's probably a lot of questions that are probably the same. What we proposed was opening a comment period and a question period. So tonight would be informational. We're going to provide a method for you to submit comments, submit questions, and then we'll have another one of these meetings where we can go back and say, okay, we're seeing that 20 people ask this question. Here's the good information and have good data to answer that question. Here, so many people ask this question, so many people ask this question, and actually present all of kind of the concerns and the questions that are out there and go through it in a more of a structured way and answer all those, and then open it up and have any follow-up questions or anything that wasn't submitted, and have that true public hearing. So again, tonight isn't a formal public hearing. It doesn't mean that we couldn't open it up, but it isn't a formal meeting anyways. It's just more of an open house. So that's kind of what we were thinking, proposing. I guess we'll play it by ear and go from there, but whatever you want to do.
All right. So, Alex, are you ready? And I mean, just so you know, and when I say it with all sincerity, I'm very grateful for you being out here. I mean, we're making these decisions, and we do not want to make them about you without you. So the fact that you're here is really, really significant, that you're here to interact with this process. So, again, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Okay, so this was voluntary. I get asked a lot of questions about this piece of property, so we decided to do this together, and then we have some of that print off that you guys maybe have picked up. Maybe some of you don't have, enough of the papers, but we'll just kind of show you everything that we have. In the background, there's a video. If they asked me to put together a video, I don't know what to show you as a video, so I I had my, office staff, my daughter, she put together just some stuff that what we do. What I am normally is just a general contractor. I just build homes in Cedar. I am a native of Parowan. I'm a graduate of Parowan. We used to live here until we just started working more in, Cedar. So years ago, over almost 3 years ago, through family friends of the Ortons, who used to own this piece of property, we bought this property. It was never not intended to not do something with it in the future, but this has been 3 years up to this point. There's never been anything other than that will someday be subdivided. So based on the process that Parowan and the state needs, this is not something that's been fast. This is actually very slow process. In the videos behind you are just random subdivisions that we've done in the past while we still build homes. We are not a big builder. We do the majority of the permits in Iron County, but we're not large, we're not corporate, we're not national, we're nothing like that. So in the past, what we normally do is we go in, we're residential only, we divide up whatever acreage that we bought, and we turn it into phases. So the phases are either built out by us, or we just turn and sell property to whoever wants to build, whoever wants to not build, never build, own it forever, give it to their kids, whatever. So as far as the map that you guys are looking at, maybe in your hands or maybe up on that, the color map, that color map really means nothing other than that's what we showed the city. So we were required to show that to the city, hey, you know, what's the zoning, what are you guys thinking? It's all residential. So it's just a residential subdivision that's going to take very long to do. I heard some of you guys talking about phases. It's not a phase map. This is just a zoning map to show that it is all residential. Or no, it's nothing. This is just what we're proposing. We're proposing that it's residential, and it's coming. Yeah, so this one. So we were asked, we are always required, okay? So some of you guys don't understand how development works. I am required to follow the state, the city, the ordinances that are in place that are on your website. You guys can look up every one of these things. There's a master plan zone, there's a master plan roadway, there are master plans, everything, okay? Me, yourself, whoever, if you own property and there is a future master plan road that goes through it, guess what? That road is going to be there based on the city's master plan. So based on this colorful map, we put this together to show that all we want to do over the next 10 to maybe even 15 years is make a residential subdivision that would be zoned something similar to this based on Parowan's approval. The first time I ever talked to the mayor, we talked about having like a cool landscape entrance. That's where the purple came from. So the purple is just like a PUD, more affordable housing type, whatever, housing subdivision. And then the red is, I think it says commercial. The red is going to be just
Future civic / commercial.
right. So we just left it out for if there was ever a need for a future school or a future church or a future something.
I'm reading off the map, by the way. That's not
Okay.
coming from me. You just can't read that small
I
letter.
know, I know. And I'm wearing my glasses, but that's not going to work. Anyway, so that was just proposed as, hey, it's across from the softball fields. You know, we don't want, you know, a bunch of stuff going on there. So maybe that's a good spot for that. Once again, this is a concept. This means nothing until it's approved. This means nothing until the city tells us what they need. And then after that, we just try to section it out because that's how development works. There's a lot of slope on this property. Obviously, a lot of the blue on the bottom of the screen, that's a mountain. So we're just saying this is part of the mountain. This is kind of what it would look like if it was half acre or whatever. At the very bottom of the screen, the city showed us that in the future they may need a water tank, a future something, who knows. That's what's kind of shown in the bottom. I guess that elevation of that mountain kind of proves to be the same elevation as the other water tanks in the other two or three areas. I'm not sure where the tanks are at, but anyway, again, that's just a concept of, hey, as a developer, we're willing to give you a spot for a future tank if needed. After that, the dotted lines that go down The 2 streets are just based on their master plan. So the master plan that we also have in that next slide is, this is from the city, but that's where those dotted lines come from. Most of you guys know I wear a hat every day, so now everybody knows I'm really bald. So this is a lot. So I know there's a lot of worry also of what future. So this is just literally from the city's map, yellow, purple, black. It just shows where they would like roads to be, future traffic. Every city has this, every municipality plans for the future, and this is not the future, this is just what's reality. As far as infrastructure goes, I know that's a lot of questions too. The developer who owns whatever, well, first of all, anybody that owns land and subdivided it at any point or deeded some of it to their daughter or their son or whatever, you're a developer too. I am not a corporate conglomerate. I am just a guy that owns land, and then in some cases will divide it up and sell pieces to whoever wants to own it. So that's the other thing that scares people too, is they're not sure who this is. So based on the rules and the things that we do, this is what we do every year. We just follow somebody's map, we follow the state's map, the city's map, and then we work together to make sure that it works for the community. As far as curb, gutter, drainage, sewer, water connections, that's all on the developer. So the developer pays for everything, okay? As soon as this thing rolls out of Greenbelt, which is in Greenbelt right now, the second it rolls out of Greenbelt, it goes back 5 years, and it pays Parowan back the percentage from Iron County to the city. So that has nothing to do with me. These are all rules that are in place that happens as soon as a property like this goes into a subdivided property, whether it's 160 acres or 5 acres. This is just how it goes. As soon as that happens, I bring in water. I own water. I own enough water to take care of this subdivision. I give that water away. So that is part of a developer's process. I have to come up with the amount of water that it would take by the city's rule to make this work. I own it. I already went out. I invested in it. It is currently farming, and as we do it, we will break off water and hand it to Parowan. The second a plat is recorded, so let's just say the first phase 2 years from now gets recorded. Sorry guys, I'm not good at this mic thing. As soon as a plat gets recorded, the property taxes start. So no matter what happens, I have to pay property taxes as soon as it's recorded, whether there's a house on it or not. Parowan's getting paid. So that's kind of the idea too. So the other part about Parowan versus county, obviously it's the county right now. I came to Parowan with the process of making this a subdivision. Well, I don't have the choice. Actually, a few years ago, you actually had a choice to not be city, county. You could decide. Or they made a new bubble sheet, which we didn't bring today. But Dan mentioned it. There's a state legislation that came up with this great big bubble for landowners, and from the bubble it had to go to the city, and then the city had to decide if it was annexable, and if the city wanted it, the city would collect that annexation, and then they would move forward. As soon as the city says no, and they have the right to say no, if everybody wants to say no, it goes right over to the county, and then it stays in the county, and then the county has it as a subdivision. So, and that's something that people don't understand also. So there's city, county. As far as the county goes, and if I'm saying something wrong, let me know. As far as the county goes, then I go to the county bubble, and then I have to follow the county's rules. Well, the county and the city have a municipality agreement that somehow says, and I'm going to make it short, hey, we agreed long ago that no matter where this is at, I'm going to use your infrastructure, no matter what. I'm going to drive down your streets, I'm going to use your water, use your power, and then I'm going to wholesale it back. Well, years ago, I always wanted it to just stay in Parowan. I have family in Parowan. My kids want to live in Parowan. People want to live here. I'd rather Parowan benefit from this. But this is not a fast process. This has been long. I have no intention of putting 500 plus homes here. My intention is to divide it up over the next 10 years. And you guys know more than me, there's subdivisions here now that are only 50 lots and still not full. So this is nothing that's gonna happen overnight. Most of my phases that I've done in Cedar are literally 40 to 50 lots at a time. And even that, a development of one phase takes a year, and then just to build a home would take another year. So there's 2 to possibly 3 years before somebody actually would live on that property. And I've owned it for 3 years already. So nothing happened overnight. This is not a scary situation, and that's why we came. So that's what this whole thing came to be today. So, based on the maps that you've seen, the things that I've done so far, we're technically nowhere. And it's not, I mean, it's funny to say that, and this is reality. Parowan is different, and it's okay. Parowan's just slower at this. And I'm not on their side. I'm actually against them, because I have to follow what they say. I have to follow the state and them and everybody's personality. So that's why we're here today. I love all of you. I think this is fun. I've been to some fun city council meetings. I always encourage a good date night is open comment at a city council meeting. But from there, what am I missing? So Dallas, I brought Dallas. He's from Go Civil. He's the civil engineer. He designs all this, and he actually goes back and forth with the city more than I do. So I get the highlights. I get to get mad over the highlights, and then I get to wait for the next section of changes and comments, and then we go back and forth. So on the table, I will show you this. Go back to that colorful map. I used to be Callie's neighbor, so she's stressed out right now. Yeah, so once again, back to this map, and some of you guys have it. In the bottom corner of that map is basically what we're saying is possible. So based on Parowan's ordinances and zones, and maybe this is part of the Planning Commission, I don't know. We actually did a table to show that we could actually divide this up, whether you agree with it or not. We could divide this up into 720 homes. That's a lot. I mean, we all know that's a lot. And a lot of this might not be buildable area anyway. That's too much. I just think that's too much. I don't want to over-condense this area. So on the blue is literally saying, okay, I think this makes more sense, 555, which is still large. I mean, don't get me wrong, that seems scary. But even if you guys look back at your census for the last 5 years and your 3% growth, this only maintains 3% growth even for the next 10 years if you even follow that, even if I was able to go that fast, which is not realistic. So that's what the tan color is, and that's what the blue color is. So blue is basically saying this is what we are willing to do if it even gets that far. So you guys could, I don't really have a lot of these copies, but this is, again, this is a concept. So it's not something that I could just print out because this might change in a week, for all I know. After that, I mean, I kind of jumped past it, but the water, the sewer, the storm drain, all that kind of stuff, the roads, the improvements, the power, that would come from me. So a lot of people also think that the Parowan City has to write checks and pay for things, and that's not how it works. So as soon as I dedicate roadways and put in the asphalt, and Parowan uses an engineer firm, they outsource. So some municipalities have their own engineer, but Parowan actually has an outsourced engineering firm that would come and inspect all this and make sure it was good. And then after all that's done, I literally hand it over and give it back to Parowan. So that's kind of how that works also. We don't have a ton of information. That's about all I can tell you. And in most cases, I mean, this is just early. Go ahead.
How many homes do you plan on building at the start?
I don't. That's a good question. I don't plan on building homes. So in Cedar, I do build homes. I don't have any intention of building homes here. We're just going to open phases up, sell them to whoever wants one, whoever wants to buy for the future. That is a good question. Will I never build a home? No. You know, certainly I'll probably build some homes here, but that is not the intention. Parowan's a different market, we all know that. So to throw up townhomes and apartments, that's not the case here. So this is a very different subdivision, a lot like maybe the one that's at the east side of town. So it's just been lots for years and years and years, and people just build them as they go. Yep. Am I missing anything?
Are you gonna play that video and?
Well, I mean, the video, you could certainly watch a video of me pointing at a plan. It's fake. But this guy approached us about a commercial, and I had to do this, and I'm glad it was only like a 1-second clip, but anyway. Yeah, this is Dallas from Go Civil. He's just the engineer that's in charge of making everything work and match the way the city wants it.
Yeah, so I think Alex did a great job there. I was going to just hit on a couple things. So I'm sure a lot of you were at the last council meeting where we did the petition. This map, the color map that's up here, just reflects Alex's property only. There's some state statutes that require we can't create islands and peninsulas, so there is larger chunks that are getting brought in that kind of just square this off. So it comes across the Smith piece, and then there's Parowan City piece, there's an Iron County piece, and then there's a subdivision down here. So our annexation includes these parcels as well, because if we bring in Alex's without these, then there's islands. With the annexation map that we've prepared is just the map. There's an ordinance that gets passed. There's generally an annexation agreement that goes along with it. Our hope in preparing this map is it's the preliminary first pass. This will go to Planning Commission. We hope that this, or some version of this, will get adopted into the annexation agreement as the zone map. And then we have a number of notes there that just talk about how many units and water and all of that with our table. We've broken it out into these colored pods. So like Alex said, the red is a civic commercial that could be school site, could be a church site, could just be your standard commercial. The purple is the higher density. A lot of times when we do planning, there's this approach called feathering where you kind of do higher density to low density. And so we start with the purple, then we go to the yellow, which is R2 zoned. The R2 zone still requires quarter-acre lots. And then we have some differentiation between the green and the blue, and then the orange. The green, the blue, and the orange, we're all proposing as being zoned R1, which is quarter-acre lots, essentially. We intend on having the blue as being more of half-acre. The green would be your standard quarter-acre lots, and then the orange, kind of in that northeast corner, is where we anticipate having some kind of stormwater basin and probably a lift station to make the sewer work. Callie, if we could just flip back to the roads, which is the other colored one. So the way that development typically works is you annex, you zone, and then you come through with a subdivision. As Alex said, this would be a multi-phase subdivision. The colors on the previous map are not a phase 1, phase 2. The phases would be much, much smaller than that. But what we do show on that map is kind of the backbone of this draft master plan that the city, I believe, is going to be adopting in the next couple weeks or months.
We're at the tail end of it. We don't have it officially. It's got to go back to Planning Commission and then to City Council.
But as far as what we can work with, that's more current than the previous version. So,
but on this side of the city, there's hardly any change from what the existing one is. Basically, there's a road that goes around the outside, kind of for circulation as a major collector. That's the dotted yellow line. That's been on the existing map for a long time, and this will tie that in. So.
And so we've shown some dotted lines on there to just kind of show the vision for what the spines or the major road networks. There'd obviously be a lot more roads that fall inside of that. But all of this stuff is very high level, and depending on engineering and grades and then how we tie in, for instance, this city view piece there's a lot going on down here, and how we make that work, I don't know, and it'll be a challenge for sure, but we've brought that in as just to say, hey, this is the city's plan, this is us trying to incorporate that plan into this, from a concept standpoint. As far as, the master planning, from our discussions with the city, they've indicated the water tank and then the master plan roads, and outside of that, I don't know that there's a whole lot of other master planned improvements that are anticipated going into this, except for whatever we need inside of the subdivision for stormwater, lift stations, sewer, storm drain, all of that. And then it's just as far as, if we can maybe flip back to the other one now, Callie. And then as far as also how development works, so the city has the master plan roads. They also have what's called a future land use map. The future land use map shows what the city intends on seeing that built out as, and this whole area is all yellow, and it's all low density residential, which is either R1 or R1A, which is the quarter acre lots. That's what that table that we had zoomed in on earlier reflects, is we're basically just saying, hey, if we annex this into the city, we zone change the entire property, which is 166 acres. If we zone it all to R1 as the future land use map says, we could come up with 720 lots. As Alex said, that's too much, and so that's where we've broken it down kind of into those colored pods. And our pod breakdown is R1 would be about 60% of the subdivision, R2 would be about 20%, and then R3 would be another 20-ish%. As far as what the developer pays for, Alex kind of touched on that. Everything inside the development he pays for. There's the rollback taxes. Every house that gets built, impact fees go to the city to help pay for upsizing of lines. Another thing that when developers do these larger projects, a lot of people talk about parks. In this setting, it doesn't seem like parks are as big of a concern when you're adjacent to the fairgrounds and the ball fields, and so we don't have anything that's specifically shown as parks. And then the stuff that is shown in purple that would be the higher density, we intend on having those being planned unit developments or PUDs, and so those would be private subdivisions that have some higher density than a quarter acre single family residential house. And then based on the city's water ordinance, we'd need about 278 acre feet to do this many houses. But the hope is that, like I said, this version or some version similar to this would get adopted into the annexation agreement. It's very common when we do annexations that we also do zone changes, and that this would come in and act as the zoning map. This is very, very high level, but with the annexation agreement, we're saying, hey, we're willing to put a cap on no more than 550 homes. This is our rough plan. The lines might shift a little bit, but we're locking ourselves in at the 550. And I think that's it.
This is kind of random, but somebody asked me the other day on a different subdivision. AJM Investments is just a LLC that owns the property. Someone asked me in another subdivision, it will change, so it's not, that didn't get sold, but AJM Investments will then transfer ownership to the development company, which is either AMC Development or 4B Ranch. So if somebody looks up ownership, which some people like to just look up ownership, 4B Ranch LLC is just another, but that's how you sell the property. So that's something I just noticed, when it was called out as AJM, and very simple. Deal?
What was the other one besides besides 4B?
I have a few different LLCs, but it will either transfer to AMC Development or 4B Ranch LLC. And that's who will actually develop each phase and then sell lots from. So sometimes that scares people when the ownership changes, but that's that. And there might be even a new LLC, but that means nothing. That's just how you sell the lots off after that's done, so.
Say you own the water rights already. I noticed you're digging a well out there. Have you hit water, and can you have that much water out of a well?
Where have you seen a well being dug?
That's in a different well on somebody
Oh, yeah,
else's
yeah.
property in the county.
Yeah, I've seen that
I
well
had the
as well.
same thought. I was like, why is Alex digging a well? Is he not gonna annex? But
Yeah.
it's not.
That's beyond my property. I think that's just above, well, okay. I was gonna say, he might know more than me. But that well has nothing to do with me. That's outside of this property. I own a farm out in the ranch. I mean, out in the valley. So. So water doesn't know property boundary. Water is underground, so it's underground water rights. So the valley's full of water. It doesn't say it has to stay in, 100-yard area of where it's at. It's attached to a well out in the farm that I own. It's being farmed by Coastal. So that farm's water that's on that well will come in and be deeded to Parowan. And then Parowan does whatever they want to do with that water. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, yes. Shares. So shares is honestly, water shares are the first Bitcoin that was ever created. It comes out of the ground, but nobody knows what it is. I own so much of it, I have to take so many shares of it and give it to Parowan City as I do each phase. So Coastal, that farms the land that it's on the well that it's on, will either come up with different water for that farm or not. It's not a very large farm, but that's how water works. Water is just in the valley.
So let me clear up the water, because there's water supply, water storage, water distribution, and water rights. When we talk about providing water to a subdivision, we're not, and he says he has water in a well out in the valley. What the city requires, if somebody develops, is that they deed to the city water rights. Shares are not water rights. Shares, sorry, Alex,
No,
I'm not trying to make you look bad.
No, this is
Shares are shares in a
confusing.
water company, which this isn't. This is a right to use water at a specific point of diversion. His point of diversion is the well out in the valley that he refers to. If the city does the annexation, we would require him to transfer the right to use that water to the city, which we would then move the point of diversion into the city wells. They would no longer be able to pump water out of those wells for the amount of water rights that were transferred, and instead the city would pump the water out of its wells. So the real question from a supply standpoint is, does the city have the capacity once we transfer the rights? Because a right is just a piece of paper, right? So that's what's required by a developer, is to transfer this to the city water rights.
yeah.
That is handled, as Alex mentioned. New growth pays for itself, and the mechanism that happens is impact fees. So every time, if you're a home builder out here, or if you're just a sole person building a house, you have to pay, if you're in the city, you have to pay an impact fee to the city for water. You also have to pay one for sewer, you have to pay one for police, parks, all these things. And that fee is set by the needed new infrastructure for the new growth. So we have our city's master plan that shows our capital improvements over the next 30 years. We know that with a certain growth rate the city has, we're going to have to add supply at a certain point in time. When that is needed, we have collected enough impact fees from each new home that requires the new supply that we have the money to do it. That's how impact fees are supposed to work. And those will be paid for by each home that gets built as it gets built. The developer in a subdivision is required to put in all of the infrastructure, and now we're talking about actually distribution lines. They have to put in all the pipes in the ground, they have to put the fire hydrants in some cases, and it is yet to be known whether it's needed. We're gonna have to have engineering and a study to decide whether we need a tank at this point, or if we just require a site location for a tank. That's gonna come down to hydrology and engineering, which we don't know at this point, but Alex and Dallas have anticipated the potential need for that, and that's why it's on the plan, but it's an unknown.
So the audience at home is having a hard time keeping up, so if a question is asked, Alex, would you mind restating it before you answer? That would be great, and if you don't want to do that, I can restate it for you.
I gotta look.
But that would help us get the audience at home able to hear the questions.
That's fine, yeah.
Question was, what is water?
What is water? Guys, I don't know what water is. When we turn on the faucet, it comes out, but nobody knows where it comes from, how the water rights work, water shares. But yes, in order to do anything as a developer, that poor soul has to go find water rights. And I've done that. So I went out and bought water rights. They're very expensive water rights. They can be moved in any well. So if I was just a normal human being that owned water rights, I could go put it on that new well that's being put out in that, and then that would be proved on that well. The state water engineer needs those rights to be on a certain well. They can be moved whether that farm dies or not, but I always own the rights until I give them away back to a development like this. Who pays for the tank, the future tank if needed by Parowan? I actually don't know. That's gonna also come down into the future planning.
Well, and
Well, see, that's the thing. I couldn't tell you if it needs a new tank, so they're engineering.
Let me have some feedback in here, and there's some things that Alex has said that I don't know if I agree with. There's a difference between a subdivision that's already inside the city and an annexation. An annexation, the city is in a position of a little bit more leverage. If we look at this and we have, first of all, on a regular subdivision, if the subdivision requires certain infrastructure to put in, that burden is on the developer, whether they're in the city or outside the city, right? When it comes to an annexation, the city can ask for more, but it has to have a pretty good justification for it, but we can ask for more. We can say, Dallas, we want you to put a 10-acre school right in the middle of that. And if Dallas is like, that doesn't make sense to me anymore, then he can stay in the county, do a subdivision per county code, and develop. Because he said, it's too rich for my blood to annex into the city. Doesn't mean the subdivision won't happen, but in an annexation, it's not just fitting minimum code. As far as what we require him to do, will be based on what needs to happen today. If we did not have enough supply, and by supply I mean wells and springs, to handle these homes as they're projected to come in, because they won't come in all at once, then we could exact, and that's the legal term, in order to annex in and bring this, you're going to have to drill another well and deed it to the city. That does not appear to be the case. One of the reasons why this process has been so slow, when Alex very first reached out to the city, how long ago was that? 2.5 years ago?
2 years ago.
He was told, we need you to just hold off. We need to update our capital facilities plan for our water system, so we even know what we need, what its capacity is, and we need to update our sewer master plan. We have since done that, and we have now really good numbers in engineering, and we know, based on Parowan's growth rates that are estimated and all this stuff, what we're going to need in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, with or without this subdivision. We know what we need. And so now we have to get down to brass tacks, and we have to actually answer some of those questions with him. I can tell you that we have capacity in the tanks. The question on whether a tank goes in or not gets down to the hydrology. Once you put all those homes in that location with our existing distribution system, do we need a tank there to overcome the static pressure? You can only put so much water down an existing pipe. It's not all about pressure. So we can't answer that question now. Do we need a new well brought online before this subdivision goes in? The answer is no. Our capital facilities master plan just answered that question. We will need new supply in the future. And if you want to read that plan, it's open to the public. As this subdivision, if it's annexed in and uses our water system, grows, plus as the rest of the city continues to grow, there will come a point where we will need to drill a new well. But that's why we're collecting impact fees. If he annexes in from his houses, if he doesn't annex in, from every other new house that gets built in the city anyways. Sorry. That's the answer.
Got a question here. Does the developer pay all the, tax base? Is there an effect that has on the, people already living here when the city has to start doing things? Are you reimbursed that money so you don't raise our taxes?
So the raising of taxes is determined by a single body, and that's this body up here. New homes do bring in new taxes. I saw one of the county officials here. She probably doesn't want me to call her out, but she's not really involved in the tax process. But the way it works is each new home or garage or basement that gets built out, the city gets what's called new growth revenue. It's actually the only way we get additional property tax dollars, because the rate floats for all of the existing homes. So each new home will provide new growth, new revenue to the city, which goes into the general fund. The general fund is what we pay for. That's not utilities. Utilities are paid for by rates and impact fees. The general fund funds our fire department, our police department, it funds our parks, it funds all of the ancillary stuff, visitor center, theater, all of that stuff. And each new home, we get some incremental new tax that goes to that. Like Alex said earlier, the second he annexes in, he would be subject to the city's property tax rate. But based on land that's in Greenbelt, that's almost nothing. It's as soon as he rolls it out of a Greenbelt and then he starts paying on it as raw land that's not in Greenbelt, the city will get some new incremental tax. But it's incremental. Really, when the tax will start to happen as homes are built out, when they happen. So. But the assumption that taxes will have to go up to pay for new services out there is an incorrect assumption. The challenge from a city perspective on our size is we don't add 1/10 of a police officer, right? We have to add police officers by ones. And so it's the growing pains of now we have 20 more homes. Does that bring enough tax to hire a new police officer? Probably not. When you get to 30 homes or 40 homes that are additional, now we're right into the uncomfortable stage of we need maybe a new police officer, but yet there's not quite enough revenue to fund it, so we have to eat that. And then we get to 50 new homes, now we've fully paid for that new officer. That's the challenge of growth, is that it's not exactly linear as our expenses go up. And it's the same thing across all of our departments. So we're always trying to grow as we can afford it, and but we also try to keep taxes down that we can. So anyways.
Go ahead.
Dan, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
In that lower southwest corner that gentleman referred to as a subdivision, actually it's property owned by 3 individuals that are here tonight. What's the reasoning why you want to annex us into the city?
Dan, can you restate that question?
I'll restate it. The question is, the annexation includes more than just Alex's property. And where that came from is not the city. That came from the county. The county, one of their concerns as property annexes into cities is they don't want to leave a peninsula. I agree with you. I don't see that as a peninsula. But the county planner and the county planning commission process identified those homes as needing to be involved in this subdivision. Alex would rather they not be, because it's like an anchor that his subdivision or his potential annexation, it gets muddy. And now we're talking about property owners that didn't petition the city, and now they're being dragged into this thing whether they like to or not. And that is because the county said, we don't want to have a peninsula. So, and on the north end, we have Linda Smith, and I see Linda out there. She's in the same boat. What it would leave is kind of a notch, is the gravel pit in the city?
In the county.
So it would not be an island. The only islands that would be created by Alex annexing is literally the part of the fairgrounds. What most people don't realize is the backside of the fairgrounds is in the county. In fact, the backside of the city's Valentine Peak Sports Complex is in the county. It never got annexed into the city. It's not a problem. Really, we operate it. We don't pay taxes, so it doesn't really matter that it's not in the city, but it's technically not. And so those would actually become a donut hole of county or an island if we do not include them. The personal property owners that are here, the private citizens, they're a part of this because the county insisted on them being part of this. When we get to the timeline, I'll talk a little bit about protest period and who can qualify for a protest. The property owners that are being included in this that maybe don't want to be are actually those that could officially protest. But the county and the city, it's pretty much irrelevant whether we're technically the property that's there annexed into the city or not. It would be clean for it to be annexed into the city because the rest of those properties are already in the city. It doesn't affect the tax base. It doesn't affect jurisdiction. We're not going to ask the county how we're going to manage half of our baseball field because it's in the county jurisdiction. And so that doesn't really matter. What really matters to the private citizens, and we get that. So I'll talk about that when we get to timeline.
So you had mentioned that he has a choice between building, developing in county or in city.
I don't think it's not a choice, but I have to follow the...
No, you could today, if you want to, you could go ahead and build in the city, in the county.
So the question was, could he build in the county or in the city?
No, he said that he could. If this isn't approved, he can choose then to build in county.
Correct.
What is the
Why?
advantage of choosing city over county?
Honestly, so what's the advantage of choosing Parowan City over county? It's the benefit to Parowan City, and that's it. So Parowan... it's the tax base, it's the money. Yep. So it's one of those weird lines that says the county can still use the Parowan City's water, power, sewer.
Now, I'm going to take exception to that. I haven't seen an interlocal that says that we have to allow that. So I would like to see that. I've heard Reed mention that. Reed is the county planner.
Do you know of a municipality agreement?
Reed has mentioned that a few times. I don't think that's the case. My understanding is if you subdivide in the city, in the county, you could ask us if we wanted to let you use the utilities, and we would have the ability to say, no, you'd have to build your own system. There is a provision about providing municipal-type services in the county per the state code, and we can, through an interlocal agreement, provide services outside of city boundaries, but I don't know if there is an interlocal agreement. I believe that is the city's option at this point.
Yeah, we'll have to find
Not saying that it wouldn't happen. I'm saying I think that is entirely one of the cards the city holds. So.
Good.
So are you guys sharing with us what your plans are and what you're doing, and the city citizens don't have any say in this? You're telling us how many are gonna be built and that you're not doing 700 and we have no say in what happens?
It's not that you don't have a say, because it's going to go to public comment. So based on this stage, to the next stage would be more of a map. It would be more of the things that I have to follow in order to get the Parowan City Council and public comment to approve. But to be real with you, it's private property. So in some cases, it's not a public piece of property that everybody gets to vote on. It's private property. All I gotta do is follow the steps. Everybody can complain about it, but I just follow the steps that I'm supposed to follow. So that's a perfect example of the county versus city. I am literally a puppet following the county's map, the city's map, and I'm just trying to funnel it down into what I'm allowed to do.
Yeah, and if I can respond briefly, and that's a very, very relevant question to all of this, and had discussions with Dan and the mayor and others. In America, in Utah, in Iron County, if you're a property owner and you own water, and you propose a use that is consistent with where the property's located, you can't stop a developer from building. So I think the relevant question before the city, and I don't mean to oversimplify this, is, and I don't mean to, I'm sure 100 things could happen, but if he wants to build a subdivision on the ground he owns, with using water that he owns, he can do that. And if the city votes no, the city votes, and I've heard a bunch of people, no, we don't want this annexation, and the council and the mayor can vote no, but nothing is to stop him from building 770 in the county in the exact same place with the same map, and it could be different colors if you wanted. He could change those colors any way he wanted. So if the question is, so the citizens have nothing to say about it, it's not necessarily you don't have anything to say about it. That's why we're here and having a pretty sophisticated discussion. But the residents of Parowan can't say, Mr. Meisner, you can't use your land and you can't use your water to build homes. All in favor say aye. I mean, you can't do that no more than you could take somebody's farm or make me paint my house blue. And so the discussion is, I believe, do we want, does the city, do the citizens and the council, do you want to have some level, modicum of control over, you know, a church in red and higher, lower feathered density and 550 as opposed to 770, and where the roads go and ingress and egress? Or if they want to just say no, we don't want to have this annexation, we don't want it to be in Parowan, then in the exact same spot, it would be in the county.
Yeah, and I wanted to also make that clear. The city so there's two active participants here. There's Alex and the other property owners being dragged in, petitioning the city for annexation. So you have the sponsor and you have the city deciding whether or not to annex. He could decide to annex and not even tell us what he wants to do with the property. We know what he wants to do with the property. Alex has been very transparent about that. And chances are that if he didn't tell us what he wanted to do with the property, we would probably say, we don't feel comfortable annexing it unless we know what you want to do. So he's saying, I want to annex. The city essentially has a decision to make, the city council. Do we allow the annexation? Is it in the best interest of Parowan City or not? We are not deciding. The city council does not have the ability to say, you can't build. What the city council can say is, we will allow you to annex, but we require certain things in order for you to allow the annexation into Parowan City. If you want to, this is, I think our astute attorney mentioned, this is a reluctant bride situation. We're talking about a marriage, and the city is not seeking out Alex. Alex is seeking the city, and we're saying, well, if we want to allow the annexation and let you tie onto our water and our sewer and all this stuff, you got to bring a dowry, right? You got to bring some stuff because we're not seeking this relationship. You are, right? However, if at any given point Alex says, you know what, this is bogus, the cost is too high, or the city council says we just don't want to do it, he says, okay, great. He still retains private property rights. He then approaches the county planning commission and says, I want to do a subdivision, and they say, okay, great, this is our code, this is what our zoning map requires, and as long as he follows their rules, Alex gets his subdivision. So the city council gets to decide whether to allow the annexation. That's one decision that gets to be made. And they are elected officials that listen to all of you and listen to their own conscience. But at the end of the day, Alex is the only one that gets to decide whether he wants to build. That same right is what everybody in this room has to get a building permit and build their house, as long as they do it within the codes that they live, or if they want to open a business. All their neighbors can't vote to say no. However, if they're in a residential area, they may have some right to say, no, this is a residential zone, it requires a conditional use permit, go in and, so there's rules to follow, but a private property right is a right. And that's, Scott's gonna punch me in the nose for jumping all over that, but this is something, I had my speech ready to go to, so.
One of our biggest concerns about this development is where the roads are coming in at. And that impacts all of us here.
Which if we annex in the city, so the question was, what about the roads? That's one of the biggest questions. That's one of the city council and city administration's biggest questions also, is how are the roads? This, whether we like it or not, this is not a random subdivision out in the valley. But from the county's perspective, if Alex wants to build and he follows their code and he says, your code says I need 2 modes of ingress, egress, and here they are, the county shall grant that. However, with the annexation into the city, we are in a position of higher leverage to the point where it becomes not feasible for Alex anymore, and he says, I don't want to play ball. But if we say, we are going to require you to have X amount of ingress, egress, as a condition of the annexation, not the subdivision, but as a condition of the annexation, we can make that a request, and we can work through that and require that. It may reach a point where Alex is like, okay, that's not feasible, doesn't pencil, I'm out. And it may be a good relationship that we could figure out some workable solution there. This is the making of the sausage of this thing, where we're asking for things that we need, and he's saying, okay, that makes sense, or that's a bit much. And frankly, that negotiation is how the creation of an annexation agreement, which isn't anywhere in state code, but the city. Well, I don't know if that's true, because I'm sure it's mentioned. They're changing it, but we require an annexation agreement where we say, we actually detail, and it's recorded with the deed, you have to do this, 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 this. Those things are always typically, you're going to have to follow all of our rules, you're going to have to follow our zoning, you're going to have to bring us water per our code, but we can add in there, we want you to build a space station to the moon, and he can say, you know what, I don't want to do it. And he's out. And he doesn't sign the annexation agreement, our marriage never happens. But most likely we're going to say, okay, these are the things that really matter, and we haven't got to the back and forth negotiation of what goes in that annexation agreement yet.
To further that a little bit, though, as far as the roads go, I can only do what they tell me to do. As far as the master plan roadways, those are residential roads, and we're looking at 555 future sites. Okay, that's just a projection. I might only be able to get 100 before I max out the egress in and out. And then that's it. And then I might not be able to do anything unless I work with them to come up with different ways. I can't do anything through other people's property that I don't know. The fact that they have to come along with this thing has nothing to do with me. But I can't force my way through people's property for this. I can't make roads through property I don't own. So I can only handle what I can handle on my property when it comes to roads. So, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say, the roads that have been shown on the map are actually Carolyn's master transportation plan. Those roads were made by Alex, that's all Carolyn's master transportation plan.
Tell the
So
mayor.
the main highway connection on 400 North, that wasn't Alex's doing, that's Carolyn's master transportation.
Yep.
And there would be additional roads. I mean, we're so far up, 1,000 feet up, we're not near the bark of the trees of a proposed subdivision. We are looking at a concept plan for an annexation. There would be additional residential roads and cul-de-sacs and whatever he just chooses to put in, which through our subdivision process, we would review, we would approve, or need it modified. This is a high-level plan.
We're gonna start raising hands, because I just got scolded by the teacher on our council that said hands need to be raised instead of shout-outs.
Hold on, this one's been waiting for just a second.
Two questions. One to Dan. You're talking about impact fees. Impact fees that you're talking about, the developers in the subdivision, but also are those impact fees going to be passed on to the local residents who reside in Parowan now?
Impact
So
fees
the-
only happen one time.
So the question is...
The question is, are the impact fees gonna be passed along to existing residents? An impact fee is a single time. It's when you pull a building permit for a new house. That's the only time an impact fee is charged.
And I think the question is that we've got this subdivision going, and there's what, 700 plus or 800 homes plus in commercial?
555.
How many?
555.
555. That requires, right now, if they were fully developed, that would require about 432,000 gallons per day. That's a design concept that we use when we start developing. That same 432,000 will go into the sewer system. And my concern is, right now, is that you're talking about, well, we've got enough water to start the subdivision. But what's the impact on the existing sewer system? You're talking about later on, we're gonna drill a well, okay, but we're still pumping water into the sewer system. What's the timeline for expanding and increasing, because we also have about 430 homes, maybe less than that, at Bryan Head. Okay, that's gonna impact our sewer system.
So do you have a question? Because you've said a lot of stuff, and I can address lots of different things, but do you have would you like me just to address everything you said? Or is this a statement?
I think it's a statement.
It's a statement,
Okay.
yet it's a question, because I think we're getting the horse before the cart before the horse. That sewer system is gonna start developing now to accommodate the subdivision, because we're still gonna be putting waste into our sewer system, are they not?
So tell me when you're done, and I'll start answering. Tell me when you're done, and I'll start answering. Okay, so let me start by talking. We talked about water, very high level. We've had a lot of water meetings. We could go into extreme detail. Our water master plan is like, I don't know, 100 pages. That's water. There's a whole discussion about sewer, and you're absolutely right. If they annex into the system, if they're allowed on our sewer system, every one of those new homes has additional sewer. We share a sewer system with Bryan Head. That's absolutely correct. We know that Bryan Head is expanding and growing. They did just approve a large annexation after an extended negotiation with that developer. And everybody thinks 555 new homes tomorrow, boom, we have it all at once. We have to build it within the timelines of the growth, and that's how that works. So yes, we know that we have to put money into our sewer system. That will be part of our negotiation with him, whether that will be done via impact fees from those new homes, or whether we will require an upfront exaction to do something now. That's all based on how much capacity we have and when we expect the new homes to come on, right? So yes, looking at that, and you say cart before the horse, asking the question before we've done the engineering is the cart before the horse. We do have our own plan. We have a pretty good idea. We could spend the rest of the night talking about sewer. But then we talk about power. There's the same conversation about power. There's definitely conversation about roads. And we can talk streets, we can talk sidewalks, we can talk schools. Like, I don't know if I answered enough of your questions, but yes, we will look in detail on all of those things, and we have a high-level look at all these things as it is, so.
Go ahead.
So my question is, just, well, annexed in, is the zoning already going to be decided at that point?
So we proposed this, they want that to be separate, a planning commission, you know, someone's gotta decide that. I'm proposing this. So if they adopt that, then it won't change.
So you are not developing this land, you're gonna sell it to somebody else,
No, I'm going to,
you're gonna sell individual lots.
yeah, I will put in the infrastructure. I will bring machines, they're gonna cut roads, sewer, do the whole thing. And then I will own it. If nobody buys it, I'm gonna have to own it. But yes, I'll just sell a lot, sell a lot, sell a lot, sell a lot. Maybe build a house, sell a lot.
So when you're talking about a PUD, though, a PUD isn't gonna come in and buy one lot.
So a PUD is just it's basically a private subdivision that would, be under an HOA, you know, they would landscape it and do the whole thing. It's still the city's, it's just that inside those walls, the HOA has to take care of those walls.
And Alex, that would just be a part or a phase or part of your subdivision, not a separate developer doing the PUD.
Right, it's just a concept of, we want affordable housing, twin homes, townhomes, you know, whatever fits in your guys' master plan.
And if I could jump in here and maybe, and everybody, I don't know if they know Heather who's standing up. Heather is on our planning commission.
I did not know.
Alex has proposed this as a concept. The question is whether it's consistent with our, we don't have zoning because it's not in the city, so it's not part of our zoning map. We have a general plan with a future land use map that shows this as light density. Translation, light density is usually what we would call R1. So this is an interesting proposal because its total aggregate density is slightly less than the max what he could get under R1. He's just shifting around how it would lay out. That's a question that Planning Commission would have to address, whether we would allow it like that, whether we would want to shift it a little differently. Some back and forth with Planning Commission. This is just a proposal.
Right. So I asked Dallas, that purple is included in the 555, so it wouldn't be on top of that.
So I guess what I'm trying, one of the things that's been brought up tonight is other developments that still have vacant lots. Trying to say that this isn't something that we should necessarily be scared of the speed of growth. But in those subdivisions that have empty lots, they have minimum building requirements. They may have 2,200 minimum square footage, and not everybody can afford that and build that, so that may be a reason and a factor as to why that lot is still sitting empty.
Sure.
And so, what I'm trying to understand is this in the same kind of category, but on a larger scale? Or is someone gonna come in and buy 50 lots and put in, you know, that's
Sure.
what I'm trying to understand.
So, do I repeat that whole question?
So she's asking if a person could go in and buy a big purchase of several lots at one time, or is the intention to follow the R1 or whatever is being proposed here? I don't know how to read it.
The zoning would restrict the building to whatever, I mean, Alex is gonna build a subdivision. If he builds lots 1 through 20, they are the shape they are. If people buy 20 of them, they could build 20 R1 homes on those platted lots. They couldn't buy 20 of them and do a subdivision within a subdivision and do 500. They would buy specific building lots. Does that, you know?
Heather, what did we miss of your question?
Are you at the very beginning going to have CCNRs
Yes.
that are going, okay,
Yeah.
to require a minimum, because if you're
Absolutely.
going to, that I would hope the city council would negotiate with you, because if that's something, we don't know,
Right.
honestly, I would love clarification as to what city council
Right.
can ask for, negotiate, say, hey, what.
I don't know.
If it is
No.
a minimum of a larger size home, you know, everybody in town by now should know, I'm a big affordable housing girl.
Right.
Then that's not necessarily a benefit to Parowan, if
Right.
it's all mixed in.
So quarter acre lots are gonna come with their own zones. I don't know what your R1, setbacks are. I mean, let's just say Cedar. Cedar's a typical 25 front, 10 on the sides, 30s in the back. By the time you take a quarter acre lot and divide it up, you're gonna end up with a, whatever, 2,200 square foot footprint. But yes, to kind of answer your question, as soon as it turns into a subdivision, it's not private, it's gonna be governed, but yes, CCNRs are gonna be in place, it's gonna have, certain rules to follow. It's not an HOA. An HOA has its own governing body. It's not gonna be that. It will fall into a CCNR. To give you an example, most of my CCNRs in other subdivisions, which is just a boilerplate, and then I kind of, make sure that they don't look like they've got chicken wire on the outside and exposed things. Those are gonna come down to part of the inspection process and then the CCNR process. But, an average CCNR size in my other homes are 1,650 square foot, 2-car garage. And that's the minimum. But yeah, I mean, it is based on the market. If Parowan feels like they need 1,500 square foot home sizes or whatever, that's gonna come down to communication. I mean, literally, what do you guys need? What do you want? I mean, there's no secret outside of Parowan, literally, within 5 seconds, big homes. Those big homes might be the county. Those are all separate subdivisions. They still use all your amenities, and I have nothing to do with those, but within our subdivisions, when we sell a piece of property, they're gonna have to follow those CCNRs or be sued civilly between myself, the developer, or whoever the builder, with. But yes, they'll have a set of rules, just like every subdivision. To answer your previous question, if I go put 50 lots out there, and Jay Hewlett shows up, buys them all, I can't tell him that he can't buy them all. He's just gonna have to follow my CCNRs. And then whether it's 5 pages or 50 pages, he's gonna have to follow those CCNRs. So, I hope that answered your question. Yeah. Yes, sir. I don't know your name, so.
I'm
Jerry.
From the north end to the south end, the yellow zone, you have that for duplexes.
No, it's still single family, right? It's smaller. R2. Here, this is Dallas.
Yeah, so the yellow shown on there was, we showed it as the R2 zone. The R2 zone still has the minimum,
Quarter acre lot
1,000.
requirement. It's a quarter acre lot. You can put a single family home or a twin home on a quarter acre.
Right, and so that was the thought. There's the feathering or buffering, but we put it on there so that there would be an option. I think that in Parowan's ordinance, they currently only allow for duplexes, which is single ownership.
Yep, yeah, we do not have what they commonly would do in R22, where you have a shared property line and do a twin home. You could build a duplex on a quarter acre, but it would have to be in single ownership. That's the way our code currently reads.
Yeah, so we put that on there just as a way to ear tag some of it. It could all just be done as quarter acre single family lots, but then within that area we could put the 10,000 square foot quarter acre lot that has a duplex, which is one owner with 2 units on it. And the other thing that I was just going to add to the previous question is, I think Alex's intent for the yellow, the green, and the blue is to all just do city standard subdivision with CCNRs. So that's the standard street width, the standard curb gutter sidewalk, everything that's standard through the city based on whatever their requirements are at the time that we come through with each phase of development. If we go the PUD route on the purple, then there would be CCNRs and there would be an HOA, and that's where you might see the smaller roads and the higher density, and that's where it could be private and have more, but everything that's in the yellow, green, and blue would just be standard city subdivision, standard streets, all of that.
Dallas and Alex, can I ask you a question? In the purple zones, Mayor, in the purple zone, I have a bully pulpit, so I could just speak, sorry. In the purple area, what have you typically built? Our code would allow lots of different things in R3. What are you kind of thinking? Are you thinking townhomes? Are you thinking smaller homes? It's still, even in our R3, they're quarter acre lots. You can just build. When you get to a PUD, it gets more creative. You can get up to 9 units per acre, and you can get more creative. You could do townhomes. You can do condominiums. Do you have a vision for that? What would that look like?
So Alex can talk about what he wants to do with the PUD as far as type of units he's going to put in there, but from Parowan's ordinance, so there's, the first part is zoning. So we would look to zone the purple to R3. You can just go and do a typical city subdivision, do lots, 3-plex, 4-plex, whatever's allowed within the ordinance. If we go to a PUD, in the city's ordinance, they require a conditional use permit with the PUD, and that's where there's additional stipulations that are put on it. And so if we're talking about putting in a townhome complex with private roads where there's 3-plexes, 4-plexes, whatever, private streets, all of that, that all gets reviewed through additional steps through city processes that isn't just preliminary plat, construction drawings, subdivision. There's a conditional use permit where we then talk about how wide the roads are, if there's amenities, if there's sidewalks on both sides, one side, if there's guest parking, this, that, and the other thing.
As far as the intention goes, it's an option. It is an open option. That's what it is. And honestly, as a builder, so I'm 80% builder, 20% developer. You guys have been to the store, you've got gas, it's expensive, everything's expensive. That is the only way to make more affordable housing than going and laying out quarter-acre lots, and the minimums are $1,600, and it's expensive. I mean, all my kids can barely afford houses, so it's not easy to do. So that purple is another option. That's what it is. Do I have plans for it? I don't. Go ahead.
This may be a really tricky question. If it stays in the county, are you able to subdivide in the county, and what are their lot sizes?
It's currently zoned R1/2 in the county.
So they would have to be half-acre lots.
So unless Alex does a zone change, there is a zone available, especially near cities where they have an R4K zone, which would allow for 4,000 square foot lots. If there's no zone change and he wants to build tomorrow, it would be half-acre lots, and he could just follow the county's code and build. That's the question. That's the answer.
Yeah, so as it stands, it's currently zoned R1/2. The county has several zones that are more high density. There's the ARC4K zone, which there's some stipulations on, but you could go up to the R4K zone, which is a minimum lot size of 4,000 square feet. They also have performance subdivisions where there's like a rubric that they grade it on, and they say, hey, if you put trails in, or you have a landscape theme, or this, that, and the other thing, then you can get bonus densities that go above and beyond what the zoning allows. And then there's also cluster subdivisions. So there are options. As it currently stands, it's half-acre. He could go in and just do all half-acre lots, no questions asked, but he could also go through and do a zone change process and apply for some ARC4K, some cluster, some max, or performance subdivisions.
So if it was half-acre lot, how would that change the amount of homes?
160.
Yeah, I would say 160 times 2.
So it would be half of 720, right?
No, it's 80.
No, it's 166 acres, so it'd be 300
Minus road.
yeah.
If your density is quarter-acre lots and you could build 720 units, half-acre lots, you could build half of that.
Right, yes, you'd be 360.
360. That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
We're doing, yeah, that's
yeah.
Give or take, depending on how the roads work and all that.
Yeah. Go ahead, in the back.
Should the decision be made, by the city council, and you go to the county, are the Parowan still forced to allow access to the development through Parowan Street?
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are public
So-
roads.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Alex, go.
No, I'm not good at repeating the question. So the question is, if it was a county subdivision, would they still be allowed to access from, city streets? They're all Parowan City, Iron County streets. So yes, they are, no one's gonna stop and ask for driver's license to see which county they live in or city they live in.
So who develops the roads from where Parowan ends to the county?
I do. So the developer does it no matter what. So the developer,
Through private property.
through my property,
Your property doesn't go all the way to Parowan Street.
it does. So 400 north is the property.
You mean 200
Or
north?
200 north, sorry. 200 north, dead ends at my property.
So
Yeah, not 400 north, 200 north.
So let me clarify a little bit there. In order to build number of units in the county's gonna look at its code, and it's gonna say you have to have so many, number of ingress, egress for a certain density of homes. I don't know what the county code says in that, but if it says up to so many houses has to have one road, and under so many houses has to have two roads, then that's what's gonna govern that. The duty is on the developer to provide that. Let's say that the county ordinance says you have to have two modes of ingress, egress if you wanna build that subdivision, and there's currently one. It would be up for the developer to find a way to put a second road in, even if that means acquiring property or something like that. In this case, the city's transportation master plan only applies if he annexes into the city. If he doesn't annex into the city, the county's transportation master plan applies. Do you know what the county's transportation master plan is right now? I saw that. It's a 0. They are waiting for us to update ours, and they plan on adopting our master plan after we adopt it, because it makes sense for counties and the cities to have the same plan. That's good planning, right? Right now, there isn't a plan. So what the county is going to say is, well, if you stay within our subdivision, if you subdivide within the county, we're going to require you to have X number of ingress, egress. We don't know what that is yet. And then Alex says, okay, well, this is where I'm going to do it. As long as he does that and satisfies that requirement, and it's a 1 or 2 family type subdivision, the county then has to approve it. What we can't do is we can't say, hang on, you have to make him do X, Y, Z. The county, we don't have any jurisdiction in there. We could ask the county and say, will you please make Alex do X, Y, Z? And the second they step over what is legally requiring, what they can legally require him, then they're stepping above their weight, and Alex can actually come back legally and say, no, you can't make me do that. So one of the arguments, and I'm not taking this argument, I'm just trying to educate about the process. One of the advantages to the city in annexing is we can say, these are our requirements. This is the code you have to follow. Rather than putting the purple there, we would like to see you put it here. Can you do that? Rather than doing those streets, our ordinance says X, Y, Z, we would like to see you do it like this. And that gives us more control. If it's in the county and they say 2 roads and Alex builds 2 roads and they tie into our system, we're going to have the impact of the additional traffic and nothing we can do about it.
Go ahead.
I may be asking something, standing back there, I can't quite hear everything, but is another benefit, if it is annexed to the city, then the impact fees do come to the city, otherwise they would go to county, and I'm sorry if it was asked, I was trying to watch on YouTube and listen.
So the question for those on YouTube that couldn't hear is, if it stays in the county, who do the impact fees go to? The answer is, the county only has one impact fee. Anybody know what it is? Dallas?
Yeah, we were just saying that there was none.
They have a sewer impact fee that they collect.
Yeah.
And it goes to Cedar.
Yeah.
If you're in the Cedar Valley. In Parowan Valley, the county has no impact fees because the county doesn't get involved in utilities at all. I don't know if I would say it screws us. What it does is, well, here's the thing. We would not collect any impact fees, but we also wouldn't have the additional growth that we have to provide services for. When it comes to utilities, when it comes to fire, we're going to provide service to this one way or the other. That's our agreement with the county. We get no property taxes. When it comes to police, we technically would not have to provide service for police. Now, I'm gonna ask our chief, who's
Okay,
sitting in the
that's all
back,
time.
if this builds in the county and a 911 call comes in, are you guys gonna stop at the road and do nothing? No, we're not gonna go in and do VIN inspections, we're not gonna provide code enforcement, but on emergency services, we have an interlocal agreement where we assist the sheriff's office assists us. We will have an impact to our emergency services, no matter what happens. We will have an impact to our roads, no matter what happens. This is not scare tactics, this is a reality, and it will cause an impact. And you better believe that if it builds in the county, and there's no improvements done to any roads within the city, these new citizens, whoever they are that build there, whether they're our own kids or whether they come from California or Texas, which is where most of our input is coming from, they're gonna say, hey, I would like to have a sidewalk that goes all the way down 200 North, clear to the school so my kids can walk there. And we're gonna say, who are you? You do not live in Parowan. And they're going to say, sure, we live in Parowan. Why haven't you built that? You're derelict in your duty, city. And we're going to say, you're not our residents. We're not getting any property tax to help fund that sidewalk. And they're going to say, we don't care. We use your parks. We drive on your streets. Why don't you do your job and fix it? And we're going to be over here with no additional revenue. It's just the nature of human nature. We can totally not annex it, but it will impact the city one way or the other. That's my point, and I'm not I sound like I'm trying to start selling this. I'm really not. I'm just looking at the realities.
I'm gonna take, I've seen 2 hands up. I'm gonna take 2 more questions. Alex has been standing up for a long time, and I appreciate his willingness to answer all these questions. We didn't anticipate that, and I just kind of let him run that part of it, but I think we'll take 2 more, and then we're gonna go into the last item, which is to walk through the process. So,
and we're going to do the comment period too.
Yeah.
We'll take all the questions just through that.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Are there any type of regulations regarding rentals versus ownership? Like, can it all be, if it's townhomes, can they all be rentals, or?
That's gonna come down to just the CC&R part of the subdivision. To answer that, I couldn't answer that. As far as, do you guys even have a rental?
So we're actually, let me answer that as well, sorry. Maybe we gotta get Larry up and answer that. We're looking at a short-term rental code. It's in its infancy. Planning Commission is looking at it. One of our concerns is their housing costs are really, really high in Parowan. They're high in Utah, but they're really, really high in Parowan. Every home that gets turned into a rental is one less home that comes off the market that could have been either a long-term rental for somebody who wants to live here, or could be a house that was sold to a family or something like that. We're looking at short-term rental code. It's a balance between property rights and not turning into a resort community that doesn't have any housing because they've all been turned into short-term rentals. I encourage you to come to our Planning Commission and give public feedback, because our Planning Commission is grappling with this, and we will be having those discussions. Currently, other than CCRs, which Dallas mentioned, we do not regulate it, other than you have to have a business license to do a short-term rental. That's the extent of our regulation right now.
and if it was in the county,
In the county, I believe, do they have short-term rental code? I don't think they do.
I think they do.
I don't think they do.
That's a good question, but that's so far down. This is just an annexation. Yeah.
Hey, 1 more question.
You got it.
Does the Parowan master plan, at what point are you looking at a full-time fire department? If we're gonna be responsible for fire coverage.
That's beyond my pay grade.
So the question is full-time fire department. Our master plan does not, we have master plans as a facilities master plan for the different utilities. We do not have a master plan for fire. What is on our radar is the need for a new public safety building. And that is something that we are setting money aside for, and we're looking for funding opportunities for. As far as a full-time fire department, I don't know if you're familiar with public safety. It's extremely expensive. Bryan Head has full-time fire, but it's actually not fire. It's law enforcement, also fire, also EMTs. They're the only agency, I think, in southern Utah that does it that way, and that's kind of something that they tend to do in mountain properties. If one of the things that the county has gotten money to is to do a study right now to look at creating a special service district for fire for the entire Parowan Valley, maybe a different one in the Cedar Valley and a different one in the West Desert. When they get done with that, they'll have some really good numbers, and if they propose something and want to create something like that, Parowan City Council would have to decide whether we want to participate in a fire district. But any way you slice it up, full-time fire is extremely expensive. Volunteer fire is way small towns work. Even if Alex builds this and he built 555 houses and they open their doors tomorrow, we would still be a very small community with 3,600 people that usually doesn't justify a full-time fire department anyways. Our biggest challenge, I wish Chief Shears was here, it's harder and harder to get volunteers.
And we really appreciate our volunteers. I mean,
That's how we make it work.
love to do a shout out for them at this point because they do all of these things as volunteers.
Hey, there we go. But one of the things being considered in this feasibility study is creating a special service district which would have full-time fire, but it would serve all the communities and all the communities would pay into it. But just the dollars and cents of it, it would come with its own tax levy, which we would then lower our tax levy, I'm guessing. That would be a legislative decision, so I can't speak for the council. But more than likely, their levy would go higher than our levy. Fire is extremely expensive.
All right, and we really do appreciate Alex. Imagine being in this position for this long, answering this many questions and being a good sport about it. Alex, did you have anything in closing?
Yeah, no, guys, this was all voluntary, so thanks for coming out. I know it's frustrating because you don't understand what's going to happen, and neither do I. So I'm literally following what I have to follow. The neighboring properties, we're just following what we have to follow. You know, we will take the less impact as much as we can. And then back to the original question of just, I'm a Parowan guy. We're just trying to benefit Parowan if this keeps going. So that's all. Thanks for coming. Thanks for asking questions. And thanks these guys for coming, because I think this was not anything you guys should have done tonight, right? This is volunteer.
Special meeting.
This was a special meeting. So anyway, thanks. I'm out.
Thank you. All right, now Dan's going to step us through the timeline and the process.
Okay, so this is the official state annexation process. We can, and we have, in fact, the meeting we have tonight is nowhere on this roadmap. This was something the council requested. Councilman Burton was pushing for additional public meetings was the word, and we're like, what does that mean? But that's what we're doing. This is the official timeline because some people want to know, and I wouldn't say that this is comprehensive, but these are the things that really matter to what we're doing. There has been all the process before this I haven't put on here. That led us to the petition to annex. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. That led us to the petition to annex, which is what was done in the last council meeting. We formally accepted the petition to annex, which allowed us to legally start the process to start courting each other, if you want to keep with the marriage concept. That was done officially on June 13th, 2024. The city has 30 days from the time that happens to make a determination of whether the petition met the requirements. With our recorder and city staff with legal advice have to answer and certify whether the petition was valid, and we have 30 days to do that. 30 days from June 13th is this Saturday. We still have not told the sponsor, because he's an annexation sponsor, we still have not told the sponsor whether it was certified or not. And we will do that before this Saturday. Once we do that, we have to notify, you ready for this? The city council. Again, this is our legal determination. Our recorder, with the attorney's blessing, notifies the city council, the sponsor, and the county commission that the petition is certified. That all that means is, yep, we can continue with the process. There wasn't an issue with the way they went about their petition. It met the minimum legal requirements, right? So that hasn't yet happened, but it will happen before Saturday. We then have 10 days to notify all of the real property owners within a half of a mile of the boundaries of the annexation. And Callie is loving that. I've asked her to err on the side of caution, and let's get a little bit of a buffer outside of that half a mile. I really don't want to have a property owner say, I measured it off with a will and I didn't get a notice, therefore you didn't do your due diligence, city. I want to make sure that we've noticed half a mile plus some, so that we've legally met that requirement that the city's required to do. Within 20 days of the day that the certification happens, we have to notify each affected entity. I won't go into state code's definition of that, but those are basically mostly the taxing entities like the school district. We have to notify the county. If there's any special service districts that provide service to these areas, we have to notify all of them, just the same notification that we give to the property owners. The reason that that is the case is because those affected entities are a potential entity that could protest the annexation. Let's think of a scenario that may happen. Let's say Alex is proposing 1,000 homes, and the school district says, hold up, we're not ready to serve 1,000 homes right there. We want to have some say in this. So the school district, as an affected entity, could file a protest if they so choose, their governing body. That's why we notice them. The reason we notice is the property owners around, because obviously it affects the property owners around. If you live near there, probably you're in this room, right? So after we have provided those notices, actually no, the way that it works is from the day that the city council is notified that the petition is legitimate, there is a 30-day protest period. Okay, this is really important, but it only actually applies to a specific few people. That 30-day clock, this is all state code. We're not trying to be restrictive or anything. That's why I'm being very transparent in this process. That 30-day clock starts when the city council is notified. So I'm assuming that the city council will be notified on Saturday that the petition is or isn't good, and so far our attorney says it looks like it's good. We're still reviewing it. That'll initiate a 30-day protest period. But if you look at the math, we have 10 days to send a notice out, plus there's time in the mail, right? So somebody may not receive notice for, theoretically, it could be 15 days. We're already 15 days into that 30-day period, right? It doesn't change. It's not 30 days from the time you receive the notice. It's 30 days. So pretty much 30 days from this Saturday is the protest period. I'm making that very clear because if anybody wants to protest, I want them to say they were disfranchised. And the affected entities, you know, they could theoretically get the notice with only 10 days left in the protest period. We're going to notify them all at the same time. A subdivision of this size is probably not going to be on somebody's radar. A lot of people have asked, how does this impact the schools? That is the school's decision to decide if it impacts them and if they want to file a protest. That's actually not the city's call. It may be a valid factor, it may not, but that's not something that the city decides. It's something that the school district decides. And by the way, class sizes have not been going up. There are a few, as you have, you know, a large group of second graders, and then the next year it's a large group of third graders. But on average, class sizes, anybody know what the graduating class was this last month? It was about the same size as it was 30 years ago. Parowan has not had explosive growth. On average over the last 100 years, because I did an analysis on it, we've grown at 1%. but our demographics are skewing older. One of the reasons our demographics are skewing older is because you can't afford a house at a small family's price. So we watched the census that our demographics are skewing older. We do not have more and more and more and more kids. So I'm not saying that schools wouldn't have a say in this or wouldn't file a protest or that it isn't a factor. All I'm saying is class sizes have been about the same. So they would have to decide whether they would want to file a protest. Sorry, I went down a rabbit hole. I apologize. Back out of the rabbit hole. Who can file a protest? Affected entities, that's the school district, special service district. The county could file a protest, which would be really dumb because it's already gone through their process to get us to this point. But that's who can file a protest as an affected entity. The other people that can file a protest are owners of real property within the annexation area, right? So there's a handful that could file a protest. I'll go down real quick, both options. If no protests are followed, it then goes to, and this is going to be news to some people here, including our Planning Commission chair, the next step is a public hearing for the City Council, and there is not a decision date. That's where we get into this space where there can be, we can go back and forth, we can ask for XYZ, we can negotiate on an annexation agreement, but the deadline that is in there is that we have to do a public hearing and notice that with a Class B notice. That's pretty standard. It doesn't mean we only have to have it doesn't mean we can't have more than one public hearing. The law requires one public hearing. And then the City Council may approve the petition. At that point, it would be annexed in. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen in there that doesn't have to happen. This is the minimum that would have to happen. If there is a protest filed by one of the qualified people to protest, we hit the brakes on this process. It then goes to a boundary commission. If there isn't a boundary commission set up already, and I don't believe there is, I reached out to the clerk's office. They have 30 days to set up a boundary commission. The boundary commission then hears the protest. The protest says, these are the reasons why I don't want to be in, these are the justification per the code, this is how you contact me. The Planning Commission is formed, they hear it, they can choose to do a feasibility study if they want to, and they can come back with a recommendation that says, we recommend you don't annex this property, we recommend a modified annexation. How about that person that protested, we go ahead and say that they don't have to be involved in it. They could recommend that. They could recommend, yep, we recommend the annexation as proposed go through, right? Or any one of different iterations in between. And that would be the boundary commission would then make a recommendation. It then comes back to the City Council who gets to make the decision whether to allow to deny the annexation, to do a modified annexation, or to approve the annexation according to what the Boundary Commission recommended. Dallas.
Can you just touch on, so when we first proposed the annexation, we tried to just annex Alice's property.
Yeah.
And then the county came back and said,
yeah,
well, based on the rules, you need to bring these other folks in with you.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could just hit on, like, the percentage of,
so,
like,
and yes. So this was a question that came up. Was this a complete petition? Was the petition filed correctly? And again, Alex did not want to be encumbered by these additional properties. That was something that the county insisted on. By the way, why would the county insist on this? Because they're a bunch of idiots, or they're bad guys, or they're mean? No, the county does not want to provide services to a tiny peninsula within a city. And by services, I mean law enforcement. Think of it from that perspective alone. If they're responsible for 3 houses in the middle of a city or on the other side of a city that they have no other coverage, it costs them more to provide services to those houses. That's why they get some say in it. If they happen to be providing utilities, which counties can do, it has to make sense. Do they actually have facilities in that area to provide services? So it gives the county and cities this ability to say, okay, does this make sense to allow somebody to switch jurisdictions? right? That's why the county has a say in it. The county decided that the additional houses and property that needed to come in, it was their opinion they needed to come in. Now, if they decide they don't want to be in this subdivision, they can file a protest. It doesn't go back to the county. The county gets no more say in this other than they can file a protest against the annexation. But it doesn't go back to them to approve the annexation. The city council has the sole ability to approve the annexation from this point on. But the boundary commission, if there's a protest, can step in as a third party and say, let's hear this thing as an appeal. And now if, Linda, can I use you, I'm not going to say that you feel one way or the other. No? Linda is a northern property. Let's say she says, I don't want to be annexed, or I would like to be annexed only under certain conditions or something like that. The the boundary commission would say, let's hear what Linda has to say, and they could make a recommendation. Okay, we recommend to exclude Linda from this thing. If she chose and they agreed, their determination, whatever it looks like, is going to come back to the city council, and then the city council has the ultimate say. I don't think the city council could force Linda in at that point if they said we recommend she's not in. But they could either deny the total thing or they could approve the recommended adjusted or modified annexation, right? And so then, let's say the county then says, no, we absolutely insist. The only remedy for a decision that was made by the boundary commission is district court. And only by the parties that were involved. And not if they signed the original petition. So there's actually some pretty good remedies for those that don't want to be annexed in. If they want to be removed, they could go this route. The boundary commission could recommend that they be removed. They could at that point be removed. The city council could then move forward without them in it. But that would require a lot of additional work. The boundary commission, just so you know, per state code, consists of 2 elected officials from the county. Carrie, where's Carrie? You could be on there. 2 elected officials from municipalities within the county. No 2 can come from the same city. And then 4 residents that are not elected officials from the county. So it forms a 7-person commission. And who picks who those are? There's a municipal selection committee that is all the mayors within the county. They get to decide who these 2, 2, and 4 are. So if we have a protest, then that's what it would look like, and that's how it would work out. And we would press the pause button by code. We actually wouldn't continue to negotiate with them or anything. We would just press pause, wait for that to happen. After that process gets done, we would then resume negotiation or whatever. At any given time, the petitioner can say, you know what, I'm done with you all, I'm just going to do it in the county. Or after this process, the city could say, you know what, we really don't want to do it, and we deny it. So there's a lot of options. We really are in a courtship, and we just want to have good, transparent information. That's the process.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah.
Will you come up to the microphone? Yeah. Thank you.
So Dan, I was more so asking just to say that when we brought this through and then the county told us, hey, you need to take these other folks along for the ride, there's specific, and it's been a little while since I've read them, but there's specific criteria that says...
Oh, yes. I didn't answer your question.
Yeah, that's more work.
So, this was whether it's a qualified petition or not. No, I answered a question he didn't ask. So, the question was, why are there people even involved and they never signed the petition? Was it a valid petition? And the answer is, there's different ways to have a successful petition, one of which is 100% of the properties involved all sign it. Another way is if a private property, real property owner owns at least 25% of the real property included, they can move forward with the petition whether the others don't do it or not. That's one of the things in state code that says can be a successful petition. And in this case, Alex's property alone is clearly over that threshold. Is it 25% or is it 1/3? I think it's 30%. It was clearly, because I remember it was about 9 percentage points above what the minimum requirement was. That's why when we debated whether to accept, to even discuss the petition, we looked at the code to say, is it even relevant? And we said, yep, it looks like it is, so we put it on the agenda and voted on it. Officially, the determination will be made this Saturday that it was good.
Yeah, and so of the annexation, we're annexing, I think it's 200-ish acres. Alex is 166, and then the county and Parowan City both have pieces inside of that also that contribute to get us to a way higher than just the 30%. And so that's why those, the other smaller pieces.
And I left the county's properties, which technically have a tax value of zero, out of the equation. And in fact, that's by design. When it talks about that, it talks about private real property.
Okay.
There's a whole different section that if we really wanted to just clean up the code and do the soccer fields, we don't actually have to go through this whole process of petitioning and all that stuff. There's a truncated process that we could go through to annex government property into a government jurisdiction, because usually that's just cleanup anyways. But this is a real property, private property calculation, and that's the way the code reads. So, did that answer your question that time, Dallas? Okay, sorry.
So I hope you feel like you are being informed completely. I think that we've had a fantastic opportunity to learn tonight. I was thinking about something someone told me years ago, which was the most flattering gift a person can give you is a book, because it's an investment in your education. And I just was sitting here thinking that it's a pretty significant gift to have this investment in our education, because throughout this process, I'm going to say this a lot because I like it so much. It's, making decisions about us, including us, as opposed to without us. And you showing up tonight to be here to go through this process, and each party here is learning as we step through this together so that we can make this decision. The council's here, they're learning at the same time you're learning, I'm learning at the same time. Our city manager, our legal, he already knows everything, but, he's you. But, just so much appreciation for your investment here tonight in learning this together with us. And I don't know that we have anything else.
No, we do. We do.
You're still walking through.
We're opening up a comment period. The comment period has no deadline. The goal is not to restrict. The goal is to actually gather as much information as possible. If you go to the city's website, there is a button that says Contact Us. If you want to use the website and submit it that way, first name, last name, email, question, comment. We will compile everything. We will make it available to the public. If you want to find out, we're not going to restrict any questions. We might black out an F word or something if that's the case. But we will provide that information. We'll compile it. I would like to have another public meeting where we can actually respond. If we get 10 questions that are about the same thing, we'll dedicate a little bit of time to answering that question, because obviously that's on enough people's mind. Where did our Citizen of the Year 2023 go? He asked like a whole bunch of questions. That's a good reason why it's good to do it this way, because on the spot, I'm nervous, I'm going to say random stuff, I may, flip words or something like that. If there's a whole bunch of questions about sewer, I can realize, all right, we need to actually show this. I can bring maps, I can talk about the master plan. If that's what everybody is worried about, I can spend more time talking about sewer. Anyways, if you want us to go the old-fashioned route and send us a letter, you have our location. You could drop it off. You can put it in the mail, P.O. Box 576. If you want to just do this form online, it comes right through to staff. Check this question out to see if you're a human being. It's not just whether you're human, it's whether you are an American. The colors on the American flag are red, white, and. AI can't figure that out, so that's how we know that you're a real person submitting that. We'll compile all those, and we will try to have another meeting or two or whatever the council wants to do, and update all these information. So that's our plan. There's no deadline. However, if you want to have the question addressed, do it before we have our next meeting, which we haven't scheduled. I kinda kicked myself as we walked in, thinking, why don't we have a date figured? But the city council really needs to set that date anyways, so maybe we'll set that date in, an upcoming agenda, not tomorrow, 'cause the agenda's already set, so. Okay, that's my little last piece there, Mayor.
All right. Does the council have anything to add? You guys have gotten to just sit and listen, but does anyone have anything they wanted to add? All right. Oh, thank you. And once again, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you.
Look, David, he's good. You're running fast, Martin. I knew this. I knew slow.
Better walk really, you know.
That's what going for me.
I mean, there's, every single person here is learning, that's the whole point.
You look like you're gonna punch.
I don't know where that thing went. I saw him right here and I went like that, and then he's not there. Well, no. I talked too much as well.